Hello, and welcome along to Susty Talk, Edie's new series of video interviews putting together to keep our audience of sustainability and energy professionals talking, feeling connected, and optimistic through this period of lockdown here in the UK and beyond. I'm Edie's content editor, Matt Mace. It is Friday, the 1st of May, and a much needed payday for many people. And joining me for this episode of Susty Talk, we have Neil Smith, Sustainability Manager at Bournemouth University. Neil, whereabouts am I speaking to you from today?
Like most people, obviously, I'm at home, and which is in actually a sunny Wimborne today, which is just north of Poole. And Yeah, I think this is week 6 of working from home. So yeah, it's actually going very well, I think, in terms of being able to work from home and the technology holding up.
Good to hear. And yeah, know the Poole region well. I was I think I'm technically Bournemouth University alumni, having graduated in 2013. So I missed that
Ah,
area. I missed that area quite, especially when the weather's as bad as it is in Haywards Heath right now, down near Brighton. And I imagine in an ideal world, you would students be on campus right now? Would it be a holiday?
Yeah, no, they came back on Monday, and absolutely right. I mean, it would have been buzzing on campus at the moment, but of course, not at the moment. They've all gone home, so it's very strange affairs, and so they're receiving all their lectures and tutorials and all the rest of it online from the lectures. So there's a lot of work going on in the background to obviously make sure all that continues and the students can continue with their studies. And so the idea that that there's just because the campus is closed doesn't mean that the university is carrying on. I mean that's very much far from the truth.
No, that's definitely true. I know a few uni students, and then they're very much grappling with the online aspect of it all right now. And for yourself, what's you mentioned 6 weeks. How has that been in terms of you and the sustainability team at the university? How are you still working on your job remits virtually?
Yeah, it's once the kind of novelty had worn off, which didn't take long. I mean, I've got a very good, very strong team. Very fortunate in that respect, and so we very quick. We every week anyway, we'd get together on a Monday just to catch up and see what people had got on, and we just carried on doing that. I mean, Teams is a platform that we've been using. It's very stable, and so it's really nice to be able to see people as well as just chat. So we do that on a Monday morning, and then we instigated a 3 o'clock tea time catch up, which was informal. So that was just anybody who was at 3 o'clock wanted to join in, and that wasn't necessarily about work. And that was just how people were feeling, and what they were reading or what they've been watching, and where they've been if they've been for their hours exercise, and that's actually proved really beneficial, I think. And in some ways, actually brought us together stronger as a team, because we're kind of getting to know each other a bit more in terms of the social side. It's actually made me think, well, maybe that's something to continue with when we come out of this. Because we all have quite busy calendars, and it's very easy to kind of very often skip over that more social, personal side of things because you're just all so busy. So actually, there's been quite an upside to that, and the team's keeping busy. We're busy with our we got our board before the lockdown to sign up to the principle of net zero carbon emissions by 2030, 31. And we've been working with a consultancy to help us prepare that report. So that work's been going on in the background anyway. So we've been all busy with the preparing, providing information and having virtual meetings to continue that process.
Yeah, great. I spoke to an engineering firm the other day, and they've recently announced a net zero target. And the big kind of emissions area for them was transport, which is obviously absolutely
Mm.
plummeted now because they can't generate. So they almost hit their goal, but they're obviously going to have to kind of re calibrate. So it's good to see another university there with a net zero target in place. And how does this differ from a normal academic year? Obviously the university would close over summer, for example. How does that impact your job? Is that a time where you can usually work on the more kind of strategy level stuff more than the implementation?
Well, first of all, just a slight correction because the university doesn't close.
Oh,
Okay,
really?
the
I
students go
suppose, yeah,
home,
as a student, I assume you did.
but the rest of us are still carrying on. Obviously, a lot quieter on campus, and then that's when we take our opportunity because that's when a lot of the maintenance work gets done. When a lot of the what we describe as minor works projects, because obviously in terms of disruption, we're trying to minimise that during term time. So it's actually a very busy time for estates. Just getting everything in place again for when the students come back in the autumn. And there's been an extremely busy couple of years now where we've been doing, a lot of construction work. So we've just opened one new building at the start of the year. We've got another one in construction, which is due to come in to us. Hopefully, we're hoping now August. But obviously, the construction industry, like everybody else, has had a bit of a knock in terms of being able to continue as program, and that has quite a knock-on effect in terms of the whole program for the university. So yeah, we've been busy with that, and there's actually we're hoping there's going to be some construction work starting fairly soon on campus because we need to upgrade some labs on campus, and we've got a cohort of students who will be wanting to use that. So there's no we can't kind of pause indefinitely. We need to be carrying on with this work, and of course that has beneficial implications for some of the local contractors as well, because of course a lot of their work has dried up. Um, it's how we come out of the lockdown is going to be the really interesting part of this. So I'd say the big difference for us at the moment is that, as I said before, normally we'd be all on campus and it'd be buzzing with all the students around, and they'd be preparing for their exams, and we'd be preparing for gearing up for a summer of maintenance works. This summer, and at the moment, it is a very strange affair, but yeah, we're planning at the moment to try and get as much of the campus back up and running for September. And then, of course, we're in quite a lot of dialogue at the moment about what can we offer for our students coming back in the autumn, and that's going to very much depend on government guidelines and where we are in the outbreak. So there's a huge amount of work that's going on in the background. So that's the kind of difference. And as I said, in terms of the sustainability team, our work over the summer is often preparing the campaigns ready for when the students come back. And that's no different. So we've been developing a communication strategy around the net zero sort of lifestyle choices anyway for ready for the autumn. So that's carrying on in the background as well. So we're trying to keep as much of the business as usual, if that's the right terminology. We have a new business as usual, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. As you know, to try and keep the momentum going. Because it's fair to say that up until COVID came along, there'd been quite a sea change over the last 12, 18 months in terms of people's recognition of how, climate change is not something now that we can hang around with. We need to make rapid change. And that hasn't gone away. It's just that people's focus quite clearly at the moment is on dealing with this outbreak. And at some point, as we keep saying, we will come out of this, and then the issues that we face with the climate haven't gone away. They're just waiting. Really, it's just a slight pause. Really, I guess the upside of what's happening is that clearly, like everybody else, our carbon emissions have completely plummeted.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the odd thing when we come to look at the data for this year. That's going to be a very anomalous year compared to where we were before. And of course, one of the concerns is, and one of the things that we've been talking a lot about, is about when we come out of this. And I mentioned it before about the business as usual model can't be the one that we had before we came into the lockdown. We need to move on, and If there are any upsides to what we're currently experiencing, is that people have now got into the swing of virtual meetings, a bit working from home, and those are things that we need to, we need to take the positives out of that, and ensure those are continued. As I say, once we come back to some kind of new normal.
No, definitely. And you touched on the communications around net zero, and obviously Bournemouth University's got a pretty strong track record when it comes to engagement, certainly around sustainable actions. You're one of the handful of universities that's used the jump kind of green rewards scheme to very good effect. And that's a kind of, it almost gamifies, doesn't it? Sustainable actions. And I know you trialed it across select departments and then rolled it out across the whole university. How has that transitioned over to a more virtual way of working? Is it applicable to domestic actions as well? How's that working?
Well, it's actually working really well, and because it's rewarding people for positive actions, and we've always focused on the balance between environment and health and well-being. Of course, at the moment, both are really vital, because people are finding that on the environment side, that they are actually, of course, they are allowed out, and therefore they're finding what's on their doorstep, and often they might not have been aware of some of the incredible habitats and on their doorstep, and also just they have a greater, when you can only spend maybe an hour out in the environment, you kind of appreciate it more. And also, of course, because there's no or very little traffic around, a lot of people have been getting onto the bikes. So start cycling, because it's a lot safer on the road, and it's a way to get your exercise. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that post COVID. But also you can hear things. We're fortunate, I have a garden, and we've been watching the birds, and you can hear the bird song, which often would just be completely drowned out by all the background noise. So that's been a real upside. And then on the health and well-being, there's been obviously endless um, videos and all sorts of materials for people to maintain their mental well-being, because of the concerns, in terms of isolation and not having contact. So all of that is germane to the way we operate Green Rewards. So in April, we ran something called All Together, and that was a calendar. So every day there was an action which was related to either appreciating the environment or your own health and well-being, whatever that was. And so that worked really well. And we've just put together, and of course it's the 1st of May, so we've just kicked off the May month. And all of that is around sustainable habits at home. So things like energy and water saving tips, making a pledge to reduce your food waste, all that, and other elements as well. So and again, rewarding people. So we're continuing with the platform, and capturing a lot of that, what people are up to, and rewarding them for it. So actually, it's perfect, because a lot of ways people have been looking around, obviously, for ideas of what they can do during the lockdown, and we've been able to provide them with those kind of ideas, with and continuing the continuity with the actual work that they were, the kind of platforms, things that they were doing before the lockdown. So, which is, it's really heartening. That's so for us, it's been a really, really beneficial to have that, to continue with the platform.
And you mentioned you were working on some campaign with the students around the net zero ambition. Is that something that's rolled out? I mean, do you think that's something that students are probably open to hearing about right now, considering all the uncertainty and confusion, or is it something you're going to kind of wait until it's more face to face?
I think we'll wait and see a little bit. It's too soon to see. As I mentioned earlier, we're still kind of working out quite what kind of return will be in the autumn for the students, and it may be that we'll have to wait maybe until sort of February next year before we're actually sort of more back to what you might describe as the usual usual campus environment. But we can still do things, in terms of engagement with the students. So before, when the lockdown came, a group of students had been set up through our office of the Vice Chancellor called, it was a vision group, and we were asking them sort of strategic questions about the future of the university. So we engaged with them around the whole net zero. What does a net zero university look like? What's it mean for them as learners, and what's it mean in terms of their values? And we ran that workshop as a virtual workshop, and had some fantastic conversations with our students in terms of, with them really being engaged, obviously very concerned about the climate crisis. And one of the things that came out of that for us anyway was that we want to continue that engagement. So there's clearly, the students are telling us through various surveys that take place that they are really concerned about the environment, and they expect the university and the student union to be playing their part. So that hasn't gone away. I just think, obviously, at the moment, focus is very much on COVID, but I think, once there's more certainty about the future, my hope, obviously, is that where we were prior to COVID, with the whole sort of pressure being brought to bear about needing to take action for net zero, will come back, and we can pick up again and engage with both staff and students to work towards our net zero target.
Great stuff. So yeah, a lot of work on that horizon, and just looking at that new normal that we kind of touched upon in terms of engagement and comms on the sustainability agenda. How do you expect that to change going forward? I mean, people I've spoken to, they're expecting an uptick in just general interest in general, but how do you think the actual conversation will change?
Well, it's interesting because we've just been talking about that, and there's a couple of key ones. One is that we are going to be asking people for kind of the more positive stories that have come out of the lockdown, because and we feel at the moment there's a real appetite for that, because obviously it's a very uncertain time, and there's there's not good news going on in terms of what's happening with the disease. So I think people are very much looking for the positives, and you only have to look at the news yesterday with the whole around Colonel Tom, and how that has really kind of brought people together around a positive story. And so I think people are looking for those kind of more positive stories, and we're looking for those from our staff and students, or certainly staff, and then we'd be looking to share them and say, this is the kind of things that people have been able to do. So whether that's they've been able to learn a new skill, or they've been the fact that they've been able to use the technology to continue to operate, all those kind of things, we want to harness that. And a lot of those then play out into the kind of net zero climate and ecological crisis theme that we've got, which is that that what I mentioned earlier about that appreciation about the local environment, or just the environment in general. So that's really interesting to see how people feel more about the locality and about green spaces, and how that then translates into them taking what you might describe as pro-environmental behaviours. So there is a link there, and so we want to build on that. And then we're also keen to, as I said before, is that people have now got into this way of working. We don't want people to just go, well, that was then, I'm now just going to continue as I was before. We now realise that you can hold virtual meetings. Technology is good enough. That should become almost the new norm. So in terms of people's commuting and business travel, there's some real opportunities there for how we operate in the future as an organisation. There will certainly be some pressure in terms of with our academic colleagues, and in terms of the way that they operate, and because of course conferences tend to be the lifeblood of the academic community, and we've kicked off that conversation about business travel now as part of the net zero, and we'll continue to have that conversation because it is, as you mentioned earlier, one of other companies are also finding that actually travel and transport, when you start monitoring it, is actually can be often a larger footprint than your buildings energy use. So we need to be looking at how we can address that, as well as continuing with the work that we've been doing to cut electricity and gas use on campus to get the carbon emissions down.
It sounds like there's a lot on your plate for the end of 2020 at the very least, and that's obviously dependent on the restrictions to lockdown in general. I think the final question then is just probably just giving you a chance to offer a piece of advice in terms of, for those that are working at home in the sustainability sphere, and they probably got used to this kind of more virtual way, but how would you recommend, what kind of tips do you have in terms of your working from home tips to make sure that there is a sense of I don't know, like, I suppose a regime? Because for me, for example, when I finish, I'm at my kitchen table right now, and my sofa is like 5 yards away. So that's the joys of living in a small flat, for example. So I mean, I can go out and do my exercise, but do you have any tips just to kind of help break up the day and keep people sane, but also focused on the sustainability agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I think routine is really important. So because my wife works from home as well, so we kind of make sure we've got into a way of it, that we start work at a certain time, we have breaks. I think that one of the tips for me is that I've actually found that I'm doing a lot of this kind of online discussion, and actually it is quite tiring. Um, uh, and so my tip for that is obviously you are supposed to take a break from your screen, in every hour. And I would be definitely saying I've certainly found it actually quite tiring, because I'm doing a lot of either WebEx or Teams, and often those meetings can be an hour, hour and a half long, and you don't appreciate just quite how tiring that can be. So my tip for that is to retire from the screen if you can. Obviously, I've got the advantage. I've got a garden, and it's nice weather. Get out into the garden, get some fresh air, and take a bit of time to allow yourself to relax. Because you've got to remember that at work you would have been moving around, you would have been going to meetings, and all that time. Otherwise, what happens is you just find yourself just continually working through the day, and that's not healthy. Um, so that's one tip, and then the other tip I find is that, again, it can be, as I said, very easy to get very static, and I think you need to be doing exercise this 1 hour a day. So we've started doing a circuit training twice a week, because we did that before. So we've been doing that, and that's again, it's very easy just to get out of the habit of doing that, because it's easier just to sit on the sofa and not be bothered with that kind of thing. But actually, we've both found that it gives you an uplift in terms of how you're feeling, as well as going out for walks as well, to kind of get the more kind of aerobic, or get a sense of being outside. So those are my kind of tips for keeping healthy during the day. And my sustainability, which, I mean, those are linked to that, but my main sustainability message is that, and I guess this has been a theme that I've been covering, is that if you have the opportunity now, you should be thinking about who you need to influence in your organisation, to be thinking about, for when you come out of the lockdown, how are you going to make sure that this new way of working is, in actual fact, becomes reality. So I'm quite fortunate in that we've got a recovery team, which is being chaired by the Director of Estates. Now, the Director of Estates is the chair of the Sustainability Committee. So I've got a direct link in, and we've already been having conversations about what does the new normal look like. And that's the kind of influence that I think people like myself need to be doing now, is having those conversations to ensure that come post lockdown, we do take the benefits of what's come out of this, out of what's happened through the COVID outbreak.
Yeah, this new normal that we're approaching lockdown is going to be fascinating to look at from a behaviour point of view, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Neil, thank you so much for being a guest on this series today. Sounds like you've got an awful lot on your plate, especially with the net zero briefings as well. And do keep us in touch about that as well. We'd be certainly interested as that develops. So thank you for taking part. And for those watching, I'll see you again soon for our next episode of Susty Talk. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay positive, and keep up that Susty Talk.